So today I'll be talking about two projects. One is one. I think that the brief in here is about nostalgia. The client wanted something that is absolutely stunning and modern, but at the same time should be very nostalgic in approach. And the other one is an extreme opposite thing. I mean, both are presented in Indian context, but the other one is futuristic, wherein the client brief is to go something, I mean, he comes from uh, aero manufacturing background and he wanted a building to represent what he does in it. And with access to all these advanced tools at his disposal, he wanted to go something very futuristic. So, yes, I mean, we thought, is my slides visible? All right, I'm assuming yes. So nostalgia, like I said, is the what we were trying to solve when we spoke about the first one. So when we represented these images to the client, when he said he wanted something, his building to be nostalgic. So this is something that really comes to our mind when we talk about Indian context, wherein with traditional courtyard spaces with beautiful terracotta roofs and verandas and wood, especially if you look at the material, and also all these natural materials that you kind of find in Indian buildings and spaces. So this is what we actually wanted when we put all of these things together. The whole idea is that for the building, it should represent this so that he can go back in time and then relive the moments. And one of the most interesting things that he also mentioned is that he wanted his grandchildren to learn about the past. I think that's something that was actually very wonderful that we heard from the client. So we came up with this form that is absolutely, you can say, fluid and parametric, and which I'm sure it would have been like very time consuming for us to do without the help of technology. But if you notice below, what's happening in this is that you see this undulating rock that is actually on the bottom. So when we speak about technology in this, I really want to talk about how not just the building and the form and what we're trying to do, but it's also very important to understand the ecology of the material, like the site, and also how technology can actually play a role in helping us, learn more about the surrounding environment and landscape. So the site location is this in Hyderabad. If you notice, there's a beautiful site on the left-hand side with the lake in there. And this is completely, this is a main road, what you see over there, access. And, I won't delve too much into the to the site, but these are some of the proposed projects at different plots and a five-star hotel coming right below this. This is the site. But then this is not what it was over time. And then when we actually looked at the past of how the site kind of evolved, the lake was actually much behind. It was like, the lake line was something way beyond. And then in this case, this is just 20 years back, approximately into 2003, this is what the site was. And then they started building this road and access to connect the highway from the airport to Gachibowli. You can see that how there is a change in the landscape. And you can see, I mean, surprisingly, the lake started growing, and you'll start identifying this, that there are these beautiful patches of lake and water that are starting to grow, which is a beautiful, actually a very positive site for the site. And this is what it is just 2 years back. What you can see that there's a lot of green, and the lake footprint has actually increased, and all that. And then, so this was my first site visit. This is what actually client gave us, which was totally probably an inadequate information for a site. What I'm going to show you now, this is the site. You can see this massive boulders on this in the corner, and this is what the site is full of rocks and beautiful boulders. You can see, I mean, the scale of this is really magnificent. You can see this line, which was what the client originally intended to build on this, above this. So this is the rocky site, and one amazing thing about the site is when you stand on the edge of the site, you don't see this highway. This highway disappears, and what you see is, I'll just show you the footprint. Like I said, there's a beautiful lake, and what you will not see over there is the road at all. And this is what, like I said, this is the first thing that we saw when we been to the site. And there's another short video that shows like I said, you don't really see the highway at all. That's the beauty. I mean, how this is where the highway is actually running. And what you see is this beautiful lake in the front. So So when we started, I mean, even before we made a sketch or any design on paper, what I told the client, this is just after my first visit to the site, I requested the client that, I think there is so much more than that actually meets the eye. And I requested the client to scoop out the complete land and unearth these rocks so that we can actually know what is below then. So the whole idea is rather than going upwards in the building, what if we first understand what is below? And we got this site entirely cleaned up, exposing the rocks that are out there, so that when I actually can actually see what if we can use these rocks as part of the landscape inside the building, how we can actually use. We documented with the help of these so the rocks using the drones. And we have these little boulders that are actually scooped out to make the road. So the whole idea is also how we can use this material for the construction eventually. And yeah, so this is what I think I'll go forward. So like I said, I mean, this is where the site is sitting with this on this tall boulders. I'll just jump into the design. So when we started, like, I think this is where things got really interesting, because for such an spectacular site, I mean, what was really important for us is to understand it. So, I mean, for us to actually make justice to the rocks, we went about, we did a 3D scanning for the first time. What we got like photogrammetry to take what is physical into digital medium, so that we can like carefully carve out around the rock, so that we are not actually tampering with the ecology. So the whole idea is that, like I said, even before we started with the design process, we started with scanning it so that we can get the precise coordinates of each and every rock. Because I think when we presented this idea to the client that let's not do anything to the rocks at all and try and actually like protect them as much as we can, because this is unfortunately, if you guys are familiar with the landscape of Hyderabad, this is a very common sight. And everywhere what is happening is that we end up seeing this what do you say like people either cut the rocks or actually build on top of it without really giving importance much to the rocks that are below. So these are some of the initial explorations to build around the rocks, and finally we landed on this, wherein we said, okay, there are these two beautiful rocks on the site, and what if we design a building like a split in between? And then this is what we came up with. Like I said right at the beginning of the presentation, that the whole idea is to, like, what the client really wanted is a traditional building. I mean, when it comes to the material and the feel, the look and feel of it, and at the same time to have something that is really contemporary in approach. So, like taking clues from all the traditional Indian architecture and the materials and all of it, with the purlins and the rafters, and he wanted a lot of wood in the construction. So we went about designing these mushroom columns that will be visible from the landscape on the ground floor, which we kind of made it like an open rock landscape in the living room. It's like an open landscape on the ground floor, and went about designing the building using this like slopes that can actually use this traditional cup rail, what we call as the country tiles for the construction. And right on the top, there is a split in the building, which can allow the light to come in, penetrate in between. And finally, we have this roof that sits on top of this. So there's a lot of optimization that we have done to arrive here before, like, so that the entire curvature of the roof can actually, I mean, there's a lot of optimization that went in so that the traditional tiles that we use can actually fit on top of this form. So that was really important for the feasibility of the project. So this is what you finally see, which is like the whole building elevated, and with this, like, I will not get too much into the planning part of it, but more in the like this. So there is this split level with a staircase. We have divided the building at two different levels so that we can, there is this narrative that follows like at a mid level as we walk in, and also the building kind of like opens up, so the entire living in the front gets the view of the landscape. And yes, I mean, this is the ground floor living room, bringing the rocks as is into the living spaces so that we don't have to cut them. So these are some of the living spaces on the ground floor. And yeah, I mean, and whatever recesses that we created, we wanted to channelize and collect rainwater using this natural slope so that we can create a natural the water reservoir for irrigation on the landscape in the building. So yeah, this is the about the first project, where I said, like, where we wanted it to kind of talk about nostalgia of like the traditional spaces, but at the same time, the use of computational tools to arrive that end. So I think there's not much, maybe just a few other images to talk about, and there is like little details here and there, but I think like finally this is what the building looks like, sitting on the boulders, wherein as if it's coming out, opening to the lake in the front. So maybe if there's anything about the planning, I can take it in the questions. And I'll quickly move to the second project, which is a roller coaster, both in form and also in the process so far. I mean, it was kind of a different kind of an experience to blow me down in this presentation. That's okay. So yeah, so in here, I mean, the site faces the golf course, and the on what you see is actually a view taken from the golf course, which is behind from the back side of the project. And the brief of the client is that he wanted the parking or the drop off to be on the first floor. So you actually climb up like a ramp that goes in, and there is this like a landscape. So there is this form that is kind of free flowing. And one very interesting thing in this building, what we try doing is that the overall all the spaces are actually fluidic, including the floor plates, and not just the form, but also there's a lot of this fluidity in the floors as well. Of course, there are a lot of areas that are flat for the furniture and all of it, but a lot of circulation around and everything is carved out in a manner that one can freely move up from one space to another, like walkable surfaces. I'll go more into that in at a later stage. So, like I said, this is the beautiful view one gets from the this where the project sits, and this is a site which is a three-side open site facing the golf course with a water body and all that. So the idea is how we can actually get this maximum experience from all the rooms, so that one can, I mean, whatever we are trying to do, it becomes experience from, I mean, the client can actually draw experience from multiple areas. So this is a site. I will not linger too much on the images, but yes. So when we started with the first design process, like I said, we wanted it to be drawing this spaces where how each and every space can actually turn in a fluidic manner, and how we can actually connect them from one space to another without really. So these were some of the initial explorations and sketches, how we can connect these spaces. And what you see, these circles are basically courtyards. We wanted this like lingering courtyards in between, and how we can actually try and connect them, so that one space in between, there are these beautiful open courts coming inside the building. And initial facade explorations, what we wanted the building to look like, and so on. And yes, and then we definitely explored a lot about the rheotomic surfaces, because we actually did not want, I mean, we wanted the spaces to be as fluidic as possible, but then finally we went about without actually using the rheotomic surfaces, but the essence of it, in which how we can, like the floor spaces can be walkable from one end to another. So this is the final design, what you see. So we have this anchor in the middle, which becomes like a home theater, and there is a ramp that actually runs on top to the lower basement, and then there is entire central space that is kind of, when somebody enters into the project, this is the entry, and then what you see is that like a beautiful drape, the facade, that kind of, as if you lifted this louvers, and the entry is kind of formed inside that, like you can say you are entering like a curtain that actually lifted up, and these beautiful rocks that you can see on the in this corner. And another challenge that we actually found on the site is that this site is lower than the golf course site. So the whole building kind of, like what it does along the curvature is also that the person, as he walks into the space, he starts climbing on this the smooth ramp to arrive at the living spaces. So like as you can see again, there's a ramp from behind that actually climbs to the first floor to reach the parking and the drop off. So there are actually two entries, and one is like a pedestrian kind of an entry on the ground floor, but the main entry with the parking and everything is on the first floor. And we have this column supports for the structure. And here, I think this is where the whole floor space and everything gets really interesting, because as you can see that the whole floor also starts to become curvy, and it was quite a challenge because we had to make sure that the functions are pretty much you can say functional, so that accessible, and with the pool and all this, I mean, different spaces as they're stepping up, and at the same time like, I mean, we could not compromise on the functionality of the spaces, and the form kind of revolves and then opens up towards the lake, so that every room, even the room that is, the idea is that a room even which is towards the front end also gets the view of the golf course from the backs. So that was the whole idea, that with this cutout and everything, that even a person who's actually taking a room in the front can see the glimpses of the golf course. And this entire ring, what you see, gets this beautiful view, uninterrupted, unhindered, of the site. So this is what finally what we have. So this area, what you see in the middle, is the curvy part. But when you enter, like this is what actually keeps moving and shuffling between the spaces. There's also like a courtyard that takes all the way from the top to the basement, to the second basement. This cutout that draws the light all the way from, like I said, from the spiraling form on the top all the way till the second basement, which has a home theater, and the informal area and everything opens towards the golf course and so on. And so yeah, this is the how the entrance is. As you can see, right when you enter, the idea is that when someone enters, he can straight get the view of the golf course on the backside. So you can see that right here. When you enter, you see this form that is like slowly climbing up, but the experience is that it actually one can get the view all the way to the golf course. And yeah, there's a section through the building. You enter on the ground floor. There is the spiraling thing that goes down, and the skylight goes all the way till the home theater on the ground floor, on the second basement. And like I said, there is a sandwich of landscape at the first floor level that connects both these blocks. So the whole first floor is actually designed like a what do you say, a common space for these spaces to actually connect. And this is where the drop off is happening on the first with the dropping area and all that. Some images from the first floor area. Yes, another isometric that shows how the spiraling thing is kind of connecting everything, and at the same time without really compromising on the functionalities, and how one can see how the spaces are evolving. And so I would like to conclude my presentation by saying that I think since I mean we are here discussing about what technology can do, I think especially in Indian context wherein we are really obsessed about, we should be, I mean, definitely obsessed about a context and what this is there. But then we do get different challenges from different clients. One, like I said, fortunately in this case, it allowed us a lot of experimentation for us to do when it comes to technology and the how the forms and everything can be evolved using like this thing. Whereas the previous example where I'm talking about, which is very much driven by the traditional architecture, especially that is relevant to India. But at the same time, how technology can also help us in even breaking that mold and trying to push the boundaries so that we can do something with the traditional forms, but not trying to replicate what was already there, but in a slightly bit more, what do you say, like innovative manner. And yes.
Okay, Monish, thank you so much. I mean, the both the structures, as usual, of course, it's totally something that you cannot expect out of an Indian residence to look like, but absolutely looks something very interesting. And I wish I like instead of being on this side of the screen, I was probably in the house or something. I think that would have been a much more interesting experience.